Well, I mean, if I give a little perspective from our side, Shekhar and I have been in this business for a long time, and especially in trekkings and expeditions, what we have been facing is lack of rules, and we as companies and also as the National Adventure Association have been after the governments and the state bodies to frame some rules, because some of the companies like all of us are trying to follow the rules on our own, while as when there are no rules, so any new entrant has nothing to follow, and they have nothing to lose at the same time. So I guess what I can infer is like it's different for different adventure activities in India. It's very important in the activity which you do of skydiving. Of course, I mean, fatalities or accidents can happen in even on a regular cycling trip as well, and that can also be lethal. But probably in skydiving, it's much more higher, and there's already a governing body like DGCA which is in play, and maybe because of that you are overruled. But we can take this platform to talk to the government directly and try and see if we can get some balance of between overruled and aptly ruled, where it is for your vertical or other verticals at the same time.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I think the onus is also some part on the state governments to
Yeah.
make sure that the activities are regulated, the right regulation is in place, and the right regulation is followed. And like you mentioned, there has to be an entry barrier between starting operations. For us, fortunately or unfortunately, for a sport, for something like skydiving, there is a big entry barrier. If you decide to jump out of a plane, you can't do it without getting into a plane and the right regulation. So that's a big entry barrier, and that may not be true for say trekking operators, for instance, which is why the challenge. So that's where I think the government comes into play, where if they are able to create a barrier and make sure that you have to overcome a regulation barrier before you start, things can definitely look upwards.
Getting back to Oliver, wanted to ask you another follow up on that. So you bring us a little bit of international perspective to our discussion, to our conversation over here. So of course, not everything must be going wrong out here. If I want to draw a little positive streak out of this conversation taking forward, what is India doing well, at least in terms of bungee jumping? What brings you back to India again and again?
If we're talking about India, I love India as a country. The thing is, with the customers that I see every day are jumping, Indians seem to be the bravest. I've worked in so many international sites. Indians are always the bravest. I've seen all walks of life, big, small, it doesn't matter. It's just, with bungee, what our philosophy is from the chin up, meaning it's just what's in your mind. It's not about your physical state, it's about your mind. And that's what I see every single day in India, is that all Indians want to take on a challenge and overcome this fear with bungee jumping. So that's what I think India are doing remarkable. And then even with the government, they are open to creating new standards and developing this. If we look back at the history of bungee jumping, it all started in New Zealand. These were the pioneers of bungee jumping. So they came up with the idea, and then they went to the government and said, look, we need to create these standards. We need to implement this against the whole country. So if you wanted to set up a bungee site in New Zealand, you have to go to the government and get the permissions and the training from the government to allow you to operate, basically. So that's where I think India are doing really, really well. But I would like to see this sort of international way that they're doing in New Zealand, Switzerland, US, sort of that idea, similar to with the skydiving, not reinventing the wheel, but implementing some of these strategies in India, I think would be really good.
How is the ecosystem evolving in the last decade or so of bungee jumping? What do you see? There's a huge demand.
The demand is phenomenal. So every international site I go to, the number one clients are Indians, always. So the demand in India is just phenomenal. Bungee jumping was very popular in Europe and the US 20 years ago, but it's now developing so much. There's such a high demand for bungee jumping, which I think is just amazing, with sort of Indian culture wanting to take on new challenges, take on new experiences. And that's what bungee jumping is all about, is overcoming those fears. So I think it's just amazing that so many like-minded people in India are wanting to do these challenges.
A cup of tea, but it's after all your life. I mean, giving a little heads up that Ministry of Tourism and the National Adventure Association some years back got a booklet on the guidelines of adventure tourism. All of us on the panel over here have been the contributors over there. And that book is primarily for tour operators, but I would recommend it to even travelers. It's available free of cost online at Ministry of Tourism's website and National Adventure Association's website. If you look at it, you will get an idea of what to look for. And also for operators also, if any operator will pick up that book and try and follow it in letter and spirit, I can assure you your quality of operations would increase 10 times. So it's important for travelers, what I mean to say. Getting back to you, Oliver, so what does India surprise you positively? Whether in terms of the customers, it's important because we're talking about business here. We're talking about Tamil Nadu tourism's investment, global investment. So of course, all of us over here, I can see we are all passion-driven people for adventure, but we also have to run the show. We also have to have customers. So what does India surprise you positively in terms of customers, in terms of the infrastructure available, and in terms of how the government is behaving?
So yeah, I think with the customers is as the site that I set up in Rishikesh, people are traveling miles and miles just to come and jump because they want to experience this. So it's fantastic that there's such a high demand in India with the customers and that they really are wanting to do extreme sports. And I think you made an extremely valid point that it's really up to the customer also to do their research. So when customers come to me, it's really nice that they have done the research and they have researched all the other activities as well. And the reason why they will sometimes pick different companies because they do their research, which I think is a really valid point to explain to everyone. Sorry, what was the other side?
Same question, but so what about the governments? What I know that you have set up bungee jumping in different states of India.
Yeah.
So of course in different states you have different state governments. Of course there's one central government. What has been your experience about that? So that Tamil Nadu tourism, if there are some draws to take away from that, if there are some positives to learn, if there's any negatives to learn, we can let them know.
I think that the positives for the Tamil Nadu government is that they are so open-minded, is that I've been in discussion and they are keen to take on some board of standards for bungee jump, because at the moment there isn't. It's just sort of guidelines of please follow these standards in New Zealand that were 25 years ago. So it's expired, but in Tamil Nadu they're open to try to create something new to be the sort of the leaders of bungee jumping, which I'm really, really excited for.
Rudra, talking about standards and operations, and because you mentioned about the international standards, how realistic are these international standards in terms of Indian conditions?
Well, like I mentioned before, I feel like there is no need to reinvent the wheel. The need is to try and understand a regulation first before you ask that question. And because you're asking me, I'll tell you this. We've been operating for 10 years. We have a 100% safety track record. And we follow the United States Parachuting Association SOP to the T. There are no exceptions made except when there is something that overrides the Indian Civil Aviation regulation. So our SOPs have been formulated. We are the only company currently, so the regulator faces challenges in trying to regulate a single entity. So our manuals basically have the United States Parachuting Association basic safety recommendations. We are affiliated with them and we follow them down to the T, which includes wind limitations, parachute limitations, who can jump with who. For instance, whether I'm going to be a tandem master or Oliver's going to be a tandem master, what kind of experience he needs. So all of us are licensed from there. And again, like I said, wherever there is something that is already working, it's very important to try and learn from that. In the context of mountaineering or bungee jumping, I feel like there may be differences on certain materials to be used for infrastructure building, for bungee jumping, for instance, because where there's snow, there may be different equipment to be used to build, etc. But the principle on which those equipments are built, or the principles on which those SOPs are built, are, I think, pretty common to any global organization. So I don't see any reason to not be able to follow those things.
What would you advise state governments anywhere all across the country, and especially the Tamil Nadu tourism, if they have to be more attractive to say skydiving operators, what they should do?
Well, if you talk particularly about skydiving, I think how we usually operate is we try to look for an abandoned airstrip which has not been actively used, or a smaller airport that is not very busy. If it's close to a tourist destination, great. But like Oliver mentioned, we have people drive and fly to us from the length and breadth of the country for skydiving. It's fascinating. We are 2 hours away from Delhi. We're about an hour away from Indore, which is the closest two airports to our major locations. We've gone as far as Jamshedpur and Bokaro in Jharkhand, where we'll be operating. And people fly in, people take buses, people take trains just to come and experience skydiving. So I think what is really important for the state governments to understand is that economies and places are being built around the activities. Back in the day, it used to be that where the hotels were or where the beaches were, tourists would flock. It is now, like you mentioned, experiential tourism, because everybody wants to see more than just a hotel and a swimming pool and a nice place. So they want to see what is it there to do over there, and then people plan their trips around that.
Great, great. Shekhar, tell me, how do tour operators scale without compromising on the safety and the quality, and of course being responsible?
Yeah,
Because
it'll-
after all businesses would like to get bigger, if not a very big company, because all of us love what we do, and we know no matter how much you control things in terms of quality, the more you scale, the more it starts getting out of little control. But we still want to be, all of us want to be decently big enough, not just for the sake of money, but for we all love to spread this joy of adventure tourism to all of us. Rudra would love more people to skydive. Olive would love more people to bungee jump. You would like to put more people on top of mountains, and so am I. So, how do we scale without compromising on quality, safety, sustainability? What's your take?
Uh, I'll get back to the same policy what you have mentioned, as Ottawa and Ministry of Tourism and the several state governments also working on the safety guidelines. That is one, as the standards to be followed, rules and regulations. But we have been trying to popularize. There is a word 3G, GGG, guides, guidelines and gear. So what we talk about, the first is quality guides, certified, trained guides. It is not certified, trained, and who are frequently upgrade themselves with the skills and the equipment. See, equipment is definitely is upgrading year by year. So quality trained guides, upgrading regular training is one. Second is gear. Obviously, once they purchase, like we are talking about flight or the bungee equipment, so they need regular maintenance. There is a SOP. But whereas in our industry, there is no SOP. It is up to the company. But I'm sure you and me will check definitely before starting a trip. We'll check our equipment and we'll repair and we'll get the things ready. So purchasing the branded or the certified gear is one part, but maintaining it and keeping, storing it in a proper way is the other one, other G, what we call as a gear. And third is guidelines. Guidelines either by the state or by the central or by the company themselves, they can have a SOP. This is the procedure. If incident happens, then who will contact whom? What is my backup? Everything preparing for a company, it is easy for operations. I know it will avoid almost any incidents. To see, adventure itself is something different. So incidents do happen, but how do we react in during the incident? See, even in a hotel, even take this hotel, Sheraton, if somebody is serving a coffee, there is some issue with the coffee or less sugar or over sugar. The time you request somebody, how they respond is the matter. It's not, the complaint is not that coffee is not good. Once they say this, boss, there is a problem with your coffee, can you please change? The other person, how they react is the problem. Same in adventure. Incident happens. See, the adventure is unknown. It happens. I'm not talking about any accidents.
As
That's
we
what
say,
some
there's a-
unexpected happens. But how do we react? How do we respond? Are we prepared for that? That does matters. So there we get the quality of the guidelines. Say GGG, that's 3G is what we have been talking about. We're trying to popularize. So that is the basic fundamentals to any company to stand up and grow, or maybe years together. And like bungee and obviously skydiving or the expeditions and treks, once we start initially, it will take time to get popularized. Once it get popularized, then after a certain time, then it gets bored. So they need somebody. They need something else. Like they were different destinations they are doing. So near Indore, and they went all the way to Jharkhand, and they are going to other destinations also. So diversifying after certain years is also required. Otherwise, people gets bored with the activities. Like same mountain, people will not climb again and again.
True, true. We face that sometimes. That reminds me, I had this question on my mind, but good that you spoke about it. It's a question to both you, Rudra and Oliver, about the gear and also training of your personnel. Because I understand it's a challenge to get the quality gears in India. It's quite expensive to import. Even for training, also, you have to go all the way to different countries. So speak to us about the gear and the training, the challenges, and if at all there are any opportunities, so that we and the government can try and work on it.
I think I just want to press upon gear because early on in my career as a skydiver, I got some very interesting advice. So the first time I spoke to somebody about starting skydiving in India, the first question he asked me was that, how many skydives do you have? And I had a aviation background, but I had zero skydives. So he said, well, first you need to slow down, and the first thing you need to think about is going skydiving. So I went skydiving, and till date, it is that one advice that stays with me because you would understand this as a mountaineer that I would not use any equipment in my commercial operation that I would not jump or that I would not put my mother or my child in. So if you can work with equipment that you would put yourself or your family and let them use that equipment, sure, then I feel like that equipment is probably safe to use. In terms of personnel training, I feel like again there are standards available, and if you as an operator can have some experience of the operation itself, that is definitely a very big advantage. I feel like where scale is difficult in adventure but is important is that usually adventure companies, the ones that do well, are driven by individuals who follow that adventure themselves. That is why scaling is a challenge. But at the same time, if you build a team that is as motivated as you are to scale that operation with you, so it's going to totally depend on the people around you, the people you surround yourself with in your organization that are going to help you scale.